Welcome to the fourth edition of Next is Now, a future of farming podcast. I'm your host, Brian Brunson with GFL Ag, and my illustrious co-host, Dan Aberhart from Aberhart Ag Solutions.
Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. What we do now has such a big impact on what happens next for the future of farming. And that is why on this show, Brian, we say next is now.
That's right, Danimal. We'll continue to discuss the debate topics that make a difference in farmers' operations now. I'll be asking a lot of questions because I really don't know a lot about farming. I just like to help where I can and try to figure out what's going on. It's my job at GFL Ag to try to understand what's happening in the world of agriculture and then kind of translate that down into layman's terms for people who might not be in the know. And hopefully, once I translate some of those things, you guys might look at us for some of our solutions to help you with those issues.
Well, you're doing a great job, Brian. I'm really proud of you. And the fun part of this show is always talking to you where your outside perspective comes out of left field and it makes for some fun on the show. So we're going to have another fun episode of the Nexus Now podcast.
Well, today, Dan and I are curious about the topic of recharging away from the farm. That's why I'm wearing my, my vacation gear. I have my vacation stash going right here. And Dan will tell you what's going to be on the show today.
Well, first of all, I got to say your decor is exceptional. I appreciate what you picked out of the wardrobe. Reminds me of the shirt that I wore to Mexico for my sister's wedding. So you're in the spirit of getting away from the farm. This is a great topic for this small period in the summer where in Western Canada we can actually try and get away from the farm and the importance of that. So today we'll be discussing your all-important questions on what now, as usual. We'll be talking to Elaine Froese, Canada's Farm Whisperer, the award-winning author and coach, about the work-play polarity that in farming never goes away in our feature interview. And of course, I had the opportunity to talk with a bunch of great producers on the coffee row about how they get away and recharge and get ready to tackle the battle. And some of the stuff that we talked about, Brian, were, getting away to these farm shows in the summer with the family, sharing war stories with other producers from abroad as a way of rejuvenating, and how you can become like a tractor with a plugged radiator. When you get burnt out, every farmer knows what that's all about. And in the community feature, we're going to update you with everything that's going on in July because she's a wild July. But it's all good, and we are here to guide you down the garden path of recharging your batteries on the farm.
Well, Dan, this sounds like a packed show, and personally, this show speaks to me because I am an expert vacationer and relaxer. So I think I'll have some input besides the questions that I normally ask that sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. So if you're passionate about agriculture and want to stay ahead of the curve, then tune in to Nexus Now and get ready for some thought-provoking discussion, unbiased opinions, and a deep dive into the future of farming. This is our What Now segment. Here are some questions that I thought up that might shed some light on how farmers recharge, producers recharge, and what they do for vacation and things along those lines. My first question, Dan, what are the preferred vacation spots for most Canadian farmers? I can imagine them finding anywhere better to go than a country that has snow on the ground 9 months out of the year. I mean, why would you want to leave that? So, where do you guys go? What do you do?
Well, surprise, surprise, I think most farmers like to get away somewhere warm in the winter, more and more, right? So it's actually places like Texas, but I would say especially Arizona that folks like to go. And you take my mom and my dad. My mom and my dad go down south to Arizona, Maricopa specifically, where there's probably a larger community of farmers that are doing things like playing pickleball and socializing and going bowling and playing playing water volleyball, believe it or not, if you can picture my mom and my dad, right? I mean,
that's awesome.
Cannot see that in Canada. You can't get that kind of front row seat to that kind of sports activity in Canada. But a lot of folks are going down to Arizona, they're going to Texas, they're going to Florida, sometimes California in the winter. And during the summer, though, we do have very nice lakes and some great hunting in the fall. But for the most part, there's a specific breed of bird that you may have heard of It is the Canadian snowbird, and they're largely coming to locales like yourself that offer a lot more sun during the winter. So,
all right, you mentioned pickleball in there. Have you played pickleball yet? Have you got it? Have you got the bug?
I have not played it. I don't know what the big excitement is about it. Have you played it? Can you inform me why this is so great?
Well, I have to admit I have been bitten by the bug of pickleball. So we're going to back up and talk about my athletic history. I played professional basketball, so did my wife. So we're very competitive people by nature. But I'm almost 50 now, and even though my mind tells me I can do things, that's not necessarily the case. And so you got to try to find some competitive outlets, just to keep the juices flowing and that competitive spirit. So me and my wife, we played tennis, and that's a good workout. But sometimes you want to be competitive and hold the beer in your hand at the same time. Hence pickleball. And I got to say, I love it, man. It's great. You can get out there, you can, hit that ball as hard as you can, hold that beer in the hand, take a seat, rest for 5 minutes, jump back in there, and you actually feel like you're playing a real sport. So I'm sold, man. You need to try it.
It sounds like it's got the distinction of being in that illustrious category of sports where it's a drinking game, essentially. That changes everything.
It can definitely. Some of these pro pickleballers they have out there, they might fight us for that, but they know what they're doing. It's exactly what it is, and they need to accept it. And listen, if I can go pro right now at the age of 49, I'll do it.
If you see a really big lime green bus with Brian's face on the side, he's on pickleball tour.
Oh, I'm on the tour, baby. I'm looking for sponsors.
GFL Ag. Worldwide pickleball tour.
Dude. All right. Well, do producers need to plan for vacations based on the types of crops they raise? Because I know it's different rotation, different times of the year. When can you, do you have to plan around that just to get away, I'd imagine?
I would say in Western Canada, it's not like Australia or Brazil where you have a couple crops every year. It's very specific. You have a short window in the summer, which is kind of why we're featuring this episode now. And say November 15th, April 15th, you can afford to be gone because there's 3, 4, 5 feet of snow, depending where you live.
Right.
But it's pretty cut and dried, Brian. There's times of the year when we can physically get away, and there's times of the year when there's work to be done.
Well, I know budgeting is a huge yearly task for producers, and it's, entrepreneurs in general. You got a budget. Is vacation an important line item?
I don't think the farmers have any money to spend on vacation, Brian. That's just, that'd be gratuitous spending. You have to do it on a shoestring budget. So you have to get creative, Maybe you can, utilize some cardboard boxes and twine or, things that you have around the farm to have fun with. No, I'm just kidding. It would be great if farmers were budgeting for that. And let's face it, you take any trip nowadays, especially with the family, it's a big budget item. But I would say, just like you have to plan for it in terms of time, you probably have to plan for it, as far as the budget goes, especially with inflation. So,
well, and the reason I ask that, because I do think that I think even normal people, they might set aside, hey, we're going to set aside some money for vacation, but they don't really plan it into their budget. Like, all right, let's look at this vacation. Let's say where we want to go, how we want to feed ourselves when we're there, what we want to do when we're there. Like, sit down. Nobody really sits down and, gets into the nitty gritty of the vacation budget. Because I know when we go on vacation, we say, oh yeah, we're going to do this and we'll probably spend this amount. But then we get there and you go way over that amount. And you blow it because you didn't plan accordingly. And so I would imagine you producers are a little bit more, all right, we got this figured out. We know what we need to spend. Seems like you guys would be a little bit more tied into that personally, from my outside view looking in.
Well, every dollar counts. And I think farmers are traditionally very good with their money because you have to be.
Yeah.
You make a million decisions about what you're going to spend on the farm.
Right.
But if the vacation is a line item that they are budgeting, I'd be very happy and proud for them that they're doing so, because I just think that typically taking time off and vacation and farming is a very hard thing to do. And if you're making it a priority, you're going to be successful in that regard. Good on you, because it's largely an afterthought. I mean, maybe later in life too, when you get to my parents' stage, it's a different thing. But I know when you're hustling to build your empire as a young farmer, vacation budget is probably the last thing on your list. after everything else, like that $1 million tractor and all the inputs that go into every acre to grow the crop. But if you're listening and you do that, good on you, because I think you're in the top 20 percentile.
Well, along those lines, once you budget everything, you figure out, where you're going to go. What does a producer do to unwind? My experience with farm folk is that they're extremely hardworking and don't know how to shut it off.
Well, this is an interesting question, because I think that the default answer for most producers would be something relatively oriented to their business. They go somewhere where there's a farm show, or maybe they tour some crops, which we had quite a few feedback on Coffee Row in that regard. But if you're really going to plan something that's meaningful and away from the farm, you have to have a period of time where you're not engaged in any business reading, any business activities, nothing to do with the farm, and truly get away. And I think for a lot of producers, naturally, they're gravitating towards the outdoors. I know a lot of folks that go hunting, and they spend, days, if not weeks, more or less by themselves in the woods, just in the solitary pursuit of that great hunting venture. But it's generally outdoor activities like that, Brian, that I think guys and gals would pursue to get away from the farm.
And they're out there unwinding, hunting on the lake. What happens at the farm when they're gone? Who handles everything?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because you really have to scale the farm to get to the point where it'll run by itself, right? And there's always things that you're going to think of that maybe I need to be there for this, or this could be happening, or that could be happening. So if you're, again, one of those producers that schedules the vacation ahead of time, that budgets for a vacation, that has people on the farm that can take care of everything while you're gone, kudos, because I think you're doing a great job in that regard. But the truth is, these days, you take a farm like ours, there's shifts, there's people with specific areas of responsibility. They definitely have, rotating vacations, and when they get away, and nobody calls them to say, hey, this blew up or that blew up. So hopefully you can get to that. I mean, on the other side of it, if you're a solopreneur kind of farmer, maybe you just shut things down and go to lake and let things unfold as they will.
That sounds like the type I would be doing.
Yeah. You might see the odd fire literally on your webcam. Oh, call the neighbor, the cattle get out. But there's all technology for that now. If the cattle get out, you can send your drone or call the neighbor or whatever.
Yeah. That sounds like me. Well, kind of switching gears a little bit. You've gotten away, you've done your vacation, all that stuff. You feel like, all right, I did my job. I took a vacation. I got away. But I think a lot of people forget about one aspect, which is mental health. Did you actually get away? Did you reset your brain? How is mental health perceived and dealt with in the world of farming?
Well, I'm really proud to say, Brian, that we've come a long way. I've been in this business for a quarter of a century now, and really from the time that I started, where it wasn't a topic or a subject or a concern at all, to now, it's really come to the forefront. I think it's become a lot more acceptable to talk about mental health, to recognize that we need time off and we need time away from the farm for mental health. And really, your mental health now really is an indicator of your ability to make decisions and move ahead in your business. So what is the value of that? Well, if we can't make good business decisions, if we're exhausted, and the smallest of things that wouldn't have been a big deal on a good day, it can just be, a mountaintop to overcome and trigger you, and it's World War III down on the farm. So I see this as a topic that everybody's recognizing the need for, and they're considering, tools and how to deal with that. And I'm just really excited and proud of how the agricultural industry has come a long way since the days when I started, when we didn't know, we weren't aware of it. So now there's a lot more talk about it, a lot more identification of what it is, and a lot more tools and support infrastructure to deal with that. And sometimes just a good vacation is better than anything for you. Right.
But I think the first step, and what we're addressing here, is we're just trying to bring it to people's attention. You got to actually look at it. Did you actually have a vacation? Did you just take time? Did you take time to smell the flowers? Did you stop? I think the first step is identifying and admitting, like, okay, I got to freaking slow down. It's hard for a lot of people to do. It's hard for me. It's hard for my wife. I'm sure it's hard for you. And which kind of brings me to my next question. What can farmers do to reduce stress during busy times?
I think being well rested as possible, and all the basics too, because as we get really busy, the basics of like water intake, sleep, eating right, all that good stuff tends to go out the window. Yep. And there's no other priority but keeping going. But how long can your physical body go before it starts protesting on you and then you're
Yeah.
fighting another battle. But scheduling those times and thinking differently, having a mindset like, I don't have anything to prove. I don't have to work to the point where things become unsafe. You're operating big equipment.
That's a really good point.
There's accidents that occur when people get really tired. And these days the sentiment's more like, hey, is this really necessary? Can we slow down a bit here and take some time so we don't drive our $1 million rig through the brush?
Kind of along those lines, not all producers are married or have families. Do you think these people tend to work more or less, be a little bit more stressed or less stressed?
Well, that's a great question. I think if you have a great family life and you've made it a priority to spend time with them and you plan and budget and execute on these actual getaways, you're probably in a good place in that regard. But if you're a single farmer, you're probably hustling too. And hopefully you're making time to, get out and about and meet the right kind of partner.
Yeah.
Hopefully you don't have to go too far. But I think it all depends. And hopefully people have a great family life. They can put it ahead and, they're not going to work to escape it, which I think is oftentimes the case, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you place more or less importance on vacationing? Like you say, if you're in the middle of building that empire, you're like, all right, I don't have time for vacation. I got to get this done. And then 5 years from now, then boom, I'll take a vacation. Is that the right way to do it?
Well, here's the thing. I think when we get really focused on building our empires, nothing comes before that, unfortunately. Yeah. But knowing what I know now, with the benefit of being 47 years old and being 7 years running a successful business, I now know that this is the most important thing. Because if you don't put your own health and welfare, it's like, put the oxygen mask on first, Brian.
Yeah.
Then you can help everybody else that's counting on you. You know how many people are counting on you in your businesses, in your family, in your community, everything you do. That's important, right? So I think we come to the understanding that this is actually part of being very successful. Yeah. But I can pretty much guarantee everybody starts out on the racetrack thinking, I gotta grind it out till I get my bank right. But that day really never. I guess it can come. But for most successful people, you will always feel like you aren't a success and you need to keep going. And no matter how successful you are, you just immediately be, what is the next thing? And it never ends. So you got to count your wins, set out some milestones, be grateful when you hit them and take some time away to get perspective. And a lot of the value that we'll find in our business, which isn't always trading time for money anymore, especially in agriculture where the decisions are really big and the numbers are really big. We can make our best decisions when we're fresh, and they might come to you in the shower on vacation with somebody special. I want that for you.
Yeah, no, I think that you made some really good points, and I think that's probably great. I love your analogy. Put on that oxygen mask for yourself first before you help others.
Don't pull the emergency door without a chute. That's also my advice.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think I feel more educated about the farming vacation rituals and practices now. All right, so maybe on to the interview section.
Absolutely, Brian. So right away when the topic for this episode came up, there was a lovely lady that came to mind. It was a good family friend of ours, Elaine Froese. And of course, she's well known in the agricultural industry here. She has a coaching business and she's helped lots of folks. And I really liked what she had to say about this work-play balance in life, especially in farming, that simply never goes away. She describes it as a polarity, which is a problem that never goes away and has to be handled, right? So we always think of problems as something to be solved and have them go away. But the reality is that we need sometimes to allow for problems or situations that are simply going to recur again, to exist in our life without, losing our stuff on it, because this will never go away. So Elaine talks about that, gives us some advice, and I think she's got some good things to say. Let's check it out.
I'm Elaine Froese, farm family coach, and way back in 1987, the government of Manitoba asked me to start writing around living intentionally on the farm in terms of work-life balance. But I don't like the word balance, because balance implies that you get to a certain point and you just stay there. What I would prefer is to use the word resilience or buoyancy. And we have in agriculture, there's a myth that we have to work all the time. And a lot of agricultural producers are workaholics because that's what they've bought into. And even when they have livestock, they say, oh no, Elaine, we can't, the work is always there. Yes. And that is why it's called a polarity. A polarity is a problem that is never solved, but it has to be managed. So in agriculture, what we have to learn to manage is this dance that Barry Johnson, who wrote the book on polarities, calls the infinity loop. And the infinity loop is we work and we play, we plan and we act. And so it's this paradigm shift, Dan, that needs to happen where people are intentional about all the different roles that they play in agriculture. The first one is self. So if you're a farmer listening to this, male or female, how are you taking care of yourself?
What's your take on that?
I mean, some of the things we just discussed in the question and answer session. I mean, take care. You got to take care of yourself first. And the whole polarity, buoyancy, it's always a constant dance. I mean, it's true. Those problems will probably always be there. You just got to figure out how to deal with them on a normal basis without freaking pulling your hair out. That makes sense, right?
The farm is always going to be there.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem is if you don't get away, you're looking out the window and there's no shortage of projects. It will never end. And imagine working and living every day in your business. I mean, we do, I guess, remotely now. But even if you're working remotely on a business virtually, you can shut down your laptop, look outside the window, and there isn't more things to do. But I think for farmers, it just never ends. And that's where the workaholism begins.
Yeah.
So, and it never goes away.
Right.
You'll never, if you're waiting for the moment where you feel like everything's done and you have enough money and you've had enough success to go away, there's a lot of old folks in farming that have never developed a hobby or gone away.
Yeah.
And these days that's not really required. There was once upon a time when you had to do that to survive, but that's not the case anymore.
No. I thought that was really poignant what you said. You need to. There's no work-life balance. You just got to dance the dance and take care of yourself.
Yep. So on to Coffee Row then, Brian. So we've had a talk with the expert, and I wanted to talk to a few folks that had come up with some things that they were doing and some things they're focused on. I got some very interesting answers, so we can get into that now. So last week I talked to Arthur Ward, a buddy of ours from Lucky Lake, Saskatchewan. He used to run some John Deere dealerships. Now he's running a big farm out there. And of course, when we asked him about what he was doing to get away, he was talking about going to Ag in Motion. So I think for a lot of folks, farm shows can be a destination, and it kind of gets you out of your own head, gets you into the public, gets you networking, have a few in the beer gardens with some friends and have some lighthearted banter, but also a great chance to talk to people in the industry about what's new and exciting. Of course, we'll be at Ag in Motion as well here shortly. But this individual, Arthur, is taking his whole family with the camper to stay at the show for a few days. So I thought that's really good. It's also that category of vacation. Hey, if you can't plan an exotic vacation that's really expensive, far away from the farm, that makes you forget everything about the farm, maybe you should just start with taking a trip that's technically a write-off. Baby steps. Like Bill Murray in that show, Baby Steps. Yeah, I think that's great. And of course, he's doing a little bit of fishing and some golfing with his sons. But he talks about the farmer guilt. If the wind's not blowing and the sun is shining, you should be doing something.
Yeah.
Not everybody can throw on a shirt like you're wearing right now and just relax and take it easy like yourself.
It's something, it's a very hard skill I've developed over years and years of practice. Just complete relaxation and letting go. It's
never seen somebody try so hard.
I'm not a quitter, man.
When you do something, you do it well.
I do it well. If I'm going to relax, I'm going to freaking relax.
Okay, well, I also talked to a good friend of mine, Chris Clays from Deloraine, Manitoba, a really sharp cookie. Always enjoy what he's got to say. And he had a very interesting take on how he rejuvenates, again, with more farming. See the theme here?
Yeah.
Farmers love to unplug with more farming, but I thought it was an interesting angle.
I find that question interesting, Dan, because part of my getting away from the farm, I really truly enjoy traveling a bit in the summer, maybe down to Iowa or where the cropping is completely different than we are, California, you name it. And I enjoy visiting other growers and hearing their success stories, or the other side of it, their horror stories, which, I mean, we all have them every year. There's something new. We've talked about this before. And, it puts a little light into my day about, it's not just me struggling or me succeeding forward, and to live with their goals and their successes. I truly love, hearing about it on other farms. So that's a big part of it for me. And of course, getting to the lake and just getting some straight downtime. I don't know if I can get rid of the internet because, we all know that I love technology. So that would be the only part I can't get rid of. But yeah, it's totally nice just to go out in the lake and forget about things.
Well, I think he brings up probably a point that all of us should probably take note of. Is you never really disconnect. Can't get rid of the internet. You got your phone with you. I yell at my kids all the time, like, all right, enough screen time. As I'm holding my phone, checking emails, going through it, I'm sitting there screaming at them, and they're looking at me like, what a hypocrite this guy is. So I think that's important. I mean, it's hard to do, really hard to do. And I admit I don't do a good job, but I think one thing is put the phone down, disconnect for a little bit.
Today, there's no feeling like unplugging from the phone today.
Yeah.
But there's another interesting point there that I'd consider too is if you have a peer group of producers that you can go and spend time with that geographically aren't so close to you that you're in competition with them, and you can hear about their trials and tribulations and what they're doing on their operations, it's highly recharging. And my dad and my brother have done this for many, many years through the Power Farm group, hosted by Rob Sake. So it's a peer group. But everybody's far enough apart in Western Canada that they can meet and they can talk numbers, labor, power, machinery, all those good things, land prices, all that. Yeah. They don't have to worry about letting out their corporate secrets to their neighbors, so to speak, and they feel really comfortable. But that kind of thing where you get away from the farm, but you rub shoulders with others, can be really great for rejuvenating as well. So I think that's important to consider.
I think that's a great point. I mean, my frame of reference for something like that would be just peer groups with other maybe fathers. Like when I first had, a kid, or you start going through the parenting stuff, like, oh my God, something's wrong with my kid. It's got to be. No other kid does this. There's no way this is normal. And then you talk to your peer groups like, oh yeah, no, my kid eats paint, and my kid does this, and my kid, okay. So it is normal. It is okay. I need to take it down a notch. It's good to find somebody you can commiserate with, talk to, get different perspectives. I think that's a great point.
Oh, I know when we go to Toronto every 90 days for strategic coach, it's just hugely rejuvenating. You come back with a head full of wind that you can really get anything done, and you're excited to get back to the grind. So that can be sometimes essentially more work can be a solution, or somewhere where you're not alone.
Validation. I think that helps with the whole mental side.
I'm thinking you should start a pickleball peer group, and you could all share.
But that's just pure joy. There's no downside to pickleball.
I have to try that one day.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, last but not least, we want to talk to my little brother, who's definitely an expert in the area of taking some time off.
Is that a kind of a dig, or is
No, it's not. I'm actually so proud of my brother because he's built a culture and a structure by which he can get away from the farm, truly unplug. You always strive to be better in that area. But 6 or 7 years ago, my brother and I started going to strategic coach together when we started Aberhart Ag. And when he first started to try and take time off, it was really tough. The team didn't support it. The team didn't get it. I mean, there was a lot of comments made by everybody, including probably myself and dad and everything. But once you understand the value of getting away from your business, and it forces you to get other people into the right roles and build standard operating procedures and delegate to other people and give up control in areas, that's part of I got a buddy who's sailing to Portugal right now on a boat.
That's awesome.
From Nova Scotia. He had to build it into his business that he could be away for 3 months. What do you think that takes, Brian, to build into your business? Do you think that'll get you past the micromanaging and having to live in your business every day? That's a huge
That's
what we see.
I like that.
That's what we see. So my brother, he's to the point with his multiple businesses where he's floating between opportunities to make things better. And yeah, he drives the sprayer Sunday. Yeah, he crop scouts. Yeah, he helps with Aberhart Ag important meetings. Yeah, he, leads this and that discussion or whatever. But he's not needed in every part of his business every day. So he has an opportunity. But you should hear what he has to say.
We all have, especially in agriculture, the culture of just working hard, right? And Dad has that famous saying that we love, how, when he grew up, it was whoever could plow the longest got ahead, and now it's whoever can farm the smartest. Going to coach and them talking about taking free days, a 24-hour period where you're totally unplugged from work, from everything else, from your phone, which we rarely ever do as a farmer or as an entrepreneur, is super important. When you're just going, you get tired, you get run down, you get less clear about your thinking and what you're doing, and you actually become much, much less productive. And one of the most important things you need to do as a leader or as a farmer or as an entrepreneur is thinking. Thinking, Henry Ford's famous quote, thinking is the hardest thing people can do. That's why so few engage in it. One of the big ahas for me is when I started taking more time off, my thinking got way clearer, tasks got way easier. I actually became more productive. And I really do strongly believe that I'm more efficient. I get more done the more time I take off, to an extent. Of course, I'm not working like 1 day a week or anything like that, but it is one of the hardest things to do, especially as a farmer. I used to be proud and brag about, running the drill for 24 hours straight. And now I think about that and it's just stupid and also very unsafe and scary. If your phone's plugged in all the time, the battery gets low and things stop working, right? And, using the farming analogy, I was thinking of like an air filter or a rad. If you're just going, it gets plugged up, right? And you start losing power and efficiency. And the only way to get that back is to stop and to let the engine cool down and to blow your air filter out and get it clean. And then when you come back with that clean air filter and the engine's cooled down, like, you've got maximum power and efficiency. And that's really what it is like in life and business.
That's a lot of great points. First of all, I love your brother. Such a nice guy, man. Such a nice guy. I always have a good time around him. Yeah, he's a great guy. And I mean, when you were saying it earlier, it's you have to almost, you got to take time away to clear everything out and understand and be clear and understand that if you're tired, you're making poor decisions. You're not thinking right. His analogy with the engine and the air filter, let it cool down, blow out the filter, come back, maximum efficiency. I love it all. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it and just break it down. If you rest your body will pay you back. You rest your mind will pay you back. I mean, I think that's really, really good, key salient points that your brother made.
No, I'm really proud of Terry, and that's why I wanted him to have him on this episode, because I think he can speak to this really well, and he's living it. Because I always feel like presenting this to the farm community, there's a lot of yeah buts, and of course we like to dad joke, yeah buts live in the forest. That's how we handle objections around the house. But the reality is, there'd be a lot of resistance to this conversation because, like, hey, in season, we got to go. We got to get this done. There's never ending work, and I get it. But think about not just at the visionary level, not just the big picture of where your business is going, which is really important to get clarity on, but think about when you get super burnt out and something that you might have been able to deal with before. How many family farm conflicts happen or employees quit happen because, you were too burnt out to emotionally regulate, and boom, World War III ensues. Yeah. Where little things just build up and don't get communicated, and then you get tired. And as I said, like Dan Sullivan has a famous quote, the more tired you are, the stupider everybody gets. And we all know that to be true, right? So it can be a pretty small thing that just makes you blow your top. Yeah. But if your rad's clean and you're running proper coolant, you're going to have a lot of capacity to deal with that. So what is the cost of blowing up at a family farm member. What's the cost of blowing up with an employee?
Yeah.
These things cost money, and when that person walks out of your life, it can cost you a lot of ability to delegate, or it can cost you the farm. So get some sleep and relax and come back to it fresh, my friends.
Yes, I think that's very important. I think this is a very important topic in general. That's why we have the podcast. We make a lot of jokes and stuff, and there's a lot of stigmatism with, taking time off for yourself. You should be working. You should work hard at it. And I think everybody across the board, not just in farming, being a producer, I think across the board. I think in North America, there's a lot of overwork people who are running on empty and blowing up at other people. I think that's a lot of stuff. You see it in the news. I think a lot of that stuff is what's going on. I mean, when you said your friends going to Portugal on a boat, I've been to Portugal a few times in the last couple of years. You know what they do? They take a lot of vacations and a lot of time off, and they're pretty happy over there.
And they live a long time.
And they live a long time. So I mean, I think we're on to something with taking some time for ourselves and recharging the batteries. So with that said, though, Dan, can you tell us what's going on a little bit closer to home? In
the community this month, there is no rest for the wicked. It is go, 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 go.
Get back to work.
And we are going to grind it out till we get our bank right. So, yeah, July 17th, the day before Ag in Motion, we're just more or less having a hospitality event that you can learn a lot at with Elston, Solberg, and the team at Sure Growth Solutions. We'll talk a little bit about biocell, but of course, it's just every time Elston presents, and we're going to have great agronomy back up there with Sure Growth, it's just epiphany after epiphany. You just want to take notes. So we'll be at the Courtyard by Marriott by the Saskatoon Airport for dinner and presentation. We'd love for you to join us. Ag in Motion, of course, is July 18th to 20th in Langham, Saskatchewan. And then the 6th annual Field of Stars event presented by Nutrien at Prairieland Park, where there's networking, live music by Doc Walker, Rib Fest, and raising funds for stars. We're always involved with that. Very proud to be involved with that cause. And then we have a whole host of meetings, agronomic meetings, where we're providing opportunity for Elston to work with producers. Some of those highlights are July 13th at Gravelburg, Saskatchewan, July 24th in Swan River, Manitoba for New Era. July 24th with New Era at Melfort, Saskatchewan, the new location. July 25th with Ken Pearson at his field day in Shellbrook, Saskatchewan. July 28th, David Renkus at Ituna. And also, I should mention, July 27th is Core Ag's Barbecue and Field Day in Regina. So, of course, you'll find us doing all this stuff and highlighting all that on social media. Contact us if you want to join us for anything. And hopefully we'll see you around the summer rodeo here before we want to fit in a little bit of downtime and get away. And I'm going to go in August to Halifax to my friends. And he is going to take us out on his 52-footer. And we are going to find some treasure at Oak Island. I'm excited to go out there. And that will be a world away from the prairies, and I probably will forget myself and be able to recharge when I'm out on the ocean on a sailboat, which is pretty foreign to my experience here on the prairies. So
yeah, that should be pretty exciting. Yeah. I'm a little jealous there.
Right on. Well, what did you think of the content today, Brian?
I think this was a great episode. I think we talked about something that's really important that a lot of people don't talk about, maybe scared to talk about. Some negative connotations to vacationing, taking time off, relaxing. I think it was a great show. I think there's some things that I'm going to take away today. Actually, after we discussed it, that I probably need to take a look at myself and what I'm doing with my family and my businesses. I think it's a really important subject, and we could probably do a few podcasts on this. Whether Absolutely. It be mental health or what have you. I think this is a very important subject, and I'm proud of the show we had today. I think we covered a lot of good stuff.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that too. And I feel the same. I think we have to get our head around the fact that the more we can take care of ourselves, as we discussed today, and the more we're taking care of our businesses and the longevity of our businesses. And we're doing our family, who often we're involved with on the farm, and our employees, a big service, and the future of the farm, a really big service by tackling this topic. So I'm really proud that we can talk about this stuff. And I just want to note, I feel better just talking about some of this stuff. That's
Absolutely.
a huge exercise. So you have to find space to create these opportunities to talk about this stuff, and it doesn't always happen on the farm. So sometimes maybe it's a few wobbly, pop wobblies around the fireplace or the fire somewhere in the woods with some friends or whatever. But, find time to get away and you'll be better for it. And especially your business will be better for it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed Nexus Now. I'm Brian Brunson with Dan Aberhart. Join us next time for a discussion on insert discussion here.
Yeah, well, I thought we had talked about something, but we know for a fact it'll be very interesting. So.
Yes, we got some. We're going to input an AI voice into that part that'll say discussion on flying saucers, cropped circles.